crisp and rich, and made simply with butter, sugar, and flour are an absolute taste of heaven. I'll start you off with the basics: a vanilla bean Spritz shortbread cookie. Then, common traits. First, a high proportion of butter. Second, they have no egg in them. And third, no leavening, baking powder or baking soda. So it relies on the simple ingredients of butter, sugar, and flour to bring them together. The vanilla bean shortbread cookies start with 1.25 cups of unsalted butter, and this has been softened up to room temperature. Make sure it's very, very soft because you have to be able to spritz or pipe these cookies. In addition to the butter, I'm using a cup of icing sugar, and it's got a fine texture to it, and that really speaks to the fine texture of this particular shortbread recipe. I'll sift that before I add it to the butter. It's important to beat your butter and sugar very, very well when you're assembling shortbread. You want to be sure to mix it on high speed for about 3 minutes. Scrape it down again. To add that vanilla bean, I'm actually going to use vanilla bean paste. You can use vanilla bean paste and vanilla extract interchangeably, but I like to use the vanilla bean paste when you want to see the speckle of seeds throughout whatever it is you're baking. Add about 1.5 teaspoons. And I'll just beat that in for a second. Now for the dry ingredients: 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. And I'll measure out 1/3 cup of cornstarch. You know how a good shortbread sort of snaps on the tip of your tongue and then melts away into nothingness? It's the cornstarch that makes that happen. And to balance out the flavors, just 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And I can add this all at once to the butter mixture. I'll start mixing this on low speed to start and then increase it. I waited just until the last few crumbs at the bottom got picked up, and I know the dough is perfectly blended. It's a soft, pliable dough, nice and smooth. Now it's time for the spritz in the Spritz shortbread cookie. A piping bag fitted with a large star tip. I'm just putting in half of the dough to make it easier to spritz. The first thing I like to do when piping cookies is first secure the parchment paper onto the tray. I just put a little bit of dough underneath so that it doesn't move as I'm piping. When making shortbread cookies, I do recommend using parchment because a simply greased cookie tray will actually promote a little bit of browning on the bottom of your shortbread, and you don't want that. Oven, like 325, is common with most shortbread cookie recipes. You want to let them bake slowly and all the way through. Remember, they're dense, but still tender, and it takes a good 20 to 25 minutes. Before you lift them, these have cooled, and you can see they've just got a hint of golden brown on the bottom. They've spread a little bit, but they retain that spritz shape. And then the key is in that first snap. Now that's a classic shortbread cookie. Remember, they're dense, but still tender, and it takes a good 20 to 25 minutes. I'll start mixing this on low speed to start and then increase it. I waited just until the last few crumbs at the bottom got picked up, and I know the dough is perfectly blended. It's a soft, pliable dough, nice and smooth. Now it's time for the spritz in the Spritz shortbread cookie. A piping bag fitted with a large star tip. I'm just putting in half of the dough to make it easier to spritz. The first